Next thing that I wanted to bring up is, there was a budget hearing yesterday downtown, and a big issue with defund the police, right? And that's what we've been hearing. The top thing, everybody talks about defund the police, defund the police. Well, the flip side of it also is that when you actually listen to the police, right, and the police aren't speaking often, but Chief Best, can you put up the first graphic? Chief Best actually made a statement back on June 22nd. And when you look at what Chief Best is saying, and then when I talked to Nikita Oliver earlier today, so there we go. So there's our graphic here. So we got Nikita Oliver there on the left, co-executive director of Creative Justice, community organizer with Decriminalize Seattle and King County Equity Now, and of course Chief Best, Seattle Chief of Police. Title's much shorter. So, first of all, if we bring up here who's the first statement you have? I think it's Nikita Oliver. So if you could bring up what Nikita said this morning. Already effectively handling some aspects of community-based mental health responses, but has been doing so over capacity and underfunded. In this time of transition, community-based organizations will need both considerable funding and some time to scale up services to meet the larger community's needs. Our societal dependency on police as the response to social issues such as a mental health crisis has meant that many community-based organizations that do this work more effectively than police have been working over capacity while also underfunded. The shift to defund police and invest in community-based public health and public safety infrastructure is a societal adjustment towards community-based public health and public safety services that are more effective. It's also overall better physical investment of the community's resources or tax dollars as stewarded by the municipality, right? And so what Nikita Oliver is basically saying is that she feels that, like, hey, you know what? A lot of the stuff, especially around non-arrest calls, non-violent calls, a lot of mental health calls, 17,000 calls, 911 calls, the police got last year around mental health issues. And so what I kind of take from Nikita's conversation this morning, I had a conversation with her over text, and that's where I got that message right there, is that there's organizations that are better suited to deal with a lot of the mental health and some of these issues that the police are currently taking on, but it's just that those organizations need more funding, right? Now, I know you got to pop in here, but I want to put up Chief Best's statement from June 22nd. This is what Chief Best said, and this was talking about her reimagining policing in Seattle. SPD has voiced for years concerns that police officers are asked to play too many roles. Officers have become the safety net for a series of failures by other social systems, many of which are the result of sustained underinvestment, as well as systemic racism. SPD is conducting a critical review of the work officers are called to engage in by the community and by other government agencies. SPD needs to work with community. Put that slide back up. SPD needs to work with the community to determine which. Right, exactly. This is what I want people to see. SPD needs to work with the community to determine which of these responsibilities can acceptably be passed to other agencies or completely turned over to the community. She talks about assess non-criminal 911 calls, current outcomes and alternative responses, determine an appropriate response to misdemeanor violations, reconsider the role of specialty units and proactive enforcement. And again, what we're saying right here is, like, to me, at least around that particular issue, Chief Best and Nikita Oliver are almost saying the exact same thing. And so, I mean, Chief Best put out this statement on June 22nd. I reached out to the Seattle Police Department this morning and asked them, I said, well, is Chief Best or other high-ranking officials, are they meeting with people from defund? You know what I'm saying? Because Chief Best says reimagination, Decriminalize says defund, but when you look at the words of what Chief Best is saying, hey, some of the things that we do are better dealt with by community, but the community right now is underfunded to be able to deal with it. That's just what Nikita Oliver said on the exact same thing. You know, we're always trying to build bridges when possible, and it seems to me that at least around this issue, around these mental health calls and everything else, I mean, we find that it looks like Chief Best and Nikita Oliver might be very close. And Nikita, I mean, and not just Nikita, you know, the KCN, decriminal, the whole defund movement. You know, I should say that Seattle Police Department and defund around the mental health might really be close right there, at least on that issue.
Yeah, and I also think that, you know, I love that you put these two statements together side by side so the audience can actually understand a lot of the mentality that's happening behind a lot of these movements. When we talk about, you know, Chief Best, you know, the community really fought for Chief Best to have that position. I know it was the community that was like, no, we need her in that position because, again, reimagining policing and working with community is something that I believe the community has been asking for a while. And again, you know, what Nikita Oliver is saying, there are many organizations on the ground who, as you were calling for specialists, right? But they're underfunded. They're under capacity. They don't have the staffing or the capacity to actually come out here. And so I think that there's a lot that can be done in terms of getting these two together because you're right. Obviously, there's a lot of middle ground here.
I mean, you know, people who know me, they know the show, they follow what I try to do. Is just like, I just call it like I see it. Yeah. And like I said, Chief Best came out with that statement on June 22nd, and I was kind of waiting to see what City Hall was saying and everything else. You know, and we don't hear from the police often. You know, it's difficult in the sense sometimes you can't get the police on the show all the time like we can, you know, public figures and everything else. But I would encourage people, you know, we'll put these, Nikki, if you can put those two shots up on the blog of part of Chief Best, what she was saying, and some of the other stuff. We'll put the other resources up there. It'd be interesting because that might actually be a bridge point right there. Because, you know, at least in my interpretation, if you just take it those words, I'm not taking anything out of context. Right. If you take those words right there, the Seattle Police Department and defund. You know what I'm saying? Reimagine, defund. Yeah, everybody has their slogan.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But there might, underneath all of that, there might be some space between it. Now, that being said, there's a lot of other issues where you know, with the city, the police, all these kind of things, that might currently be a bridge too far. But this around the issue of, you know, of mental health, because when you talk, it's not just Chief Best here. You talk to police chiefs across America. I mean, what happened years ago is that the public decided not to fund all of these things like mental institutions and everything else. They took the funding out of it and they dropped it on the police. So it's not just an issue here in Seattle. It's an issue across America that the police are dealing with homeless issues. The police are dealing with substance abuse issues. You know, the police are dealing with mental illness because there hasn't been investment in the rest of society for that. And so then it falls in the police lap. So, you know, there's police, chiefs, sheriffs all across America that I think have a similar sentiment of Chief Best.
Yeah, that was literally what I was going to say here, because we actually covered it. I mean, we covered another chief in another place saying, look, the police are stretched too thin. And ultimately, I think that the people understand that as well. So sometimes I guess the two sides being like, hey, decrim or defund the police, and the protesters coming after the police, they also understand too. There's some understanding there. The police are overworked, man, and ultimately there's a real way that community organizations, community groups, specialty experts can really come in, but that funding needs to flow through. And so I think that that's really where a lot of the defund SPD comes from, because there's some tangible items that can be funded toward relieving a lot of that from the police force.
Right. In my conversation with Nikita Oliver earlier, she as well said that, you know, something like that doesn't happen overnight. You know, there's definitely transitional periods and overlap periods between policing and community. I mean, it's a process. Yeah. You know, when you're talking about something, a real structural change around policing and things, it takes time. But all I can say is this, is that if it's not occurring, I mean, of course, Seattle Police, they couldn't confirm it. I asked them earlier, I said, are you talking to defund? Anybody from defund in City Hall? Are you talking to any of the people, the organizers and community around defund? Couldn't really confirm it, said follow up with the mayor's office. But if they're not talking, you know, because you hear from these people, these city council members, But, it might not really take the city council and all these other people for the Seattle Police Department and community organizations. It doesn't hurt to have a breakout session.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? See, because also it'd be interesting is people that need to understand all the layer. The devil's always in the details. You know what I'm saying? What are all these things? What are the legalities that can go into this? What additional laws might need to be changed or enacted for X, Y, and Z to occur? But I really think that if it's not occurring right now, at least around that one issue, I know people have a lot of issues with police. Police have other issues with this and that, or whatever. But around this one issue right here, around how the police respond to mental health calls and things like that, it seems like there's a space for the Seattle Police Department and the people over here in this other movement and defund to at least have a conversation. It doesn't need, because on the city hall levels, sometimes it's too high stakes and egos are too big. You know what I'm saying? It might just go somewhere. Cameras don't need to be there. It's cool. Just start talking.
I just love that you lifted that up. I mean, literally, that's what I was thinking, to think about what can be done when we remove a lot of the bureaucracy of it all. The fact that, that's what they have to do is be like, hey, reach out to the mayor's office. I love that idea of just, it's community members. I love when Carmen Best literally said, look, these are my community members. People that were going to funeral services are people that those are her neighbors and community members. And so to come from the community, it's right. There's a way to just, hey, reach out to community. Let's have that good discussion and let's figure out how to start moving this forward. I think also too, in terms of, when we talk about the new normal, I think a lot of it is literally in what you just described. It's taking away the bureaucracy and the hierarchy of it all and just getting to the people, you know what I mean? And really having those earnest discussions. I think that you're so right on that.